Oh, cool. I'm in. Hi, my name is Ally. I'm an activist from the New York metropolitan area, uh, from Jersey. I'm waiting for my friend Frankie, who is also a journalist. We met at our school newspaper. But basically, what I want to talk about is that police brutality isn't an isolated incident in just America alone. It happens all over the world, and all over the world darker bodies are prosecuted and persecuted for things that they can't control. It's a really, really messed up system, and I'm a queer woman, so it's just really interesting to me to see other LGBT people online talking about looting and how it delegitimizes a movement and riots, when Stonewall was 5 days of riots and looting. And that's the reason why we have some of the rights that we do now as gay people in the US. Like this was a movement led by trans women of color, by Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera, who are part of these marginalized communities. And it's this rage that feeds a movement, because start things don't change if you just keep letting people step on you physically and metaphorically. And it's so disgusting. And last night, after I got home from the protests in Newark, which were thankfully peaceful protests, unlike a lot of the ones that are erupting in the US everywhere in a lot of major cities. When I got back home, I couldn't help but cry, to just know that there's this racist system that people say, like, oh, the justice system is so broken. But the thing is, it's not. It's firing on all cylinders exactly the way that it was designed. In the US, the modern police force came about because of slave rounders, like slave catchers. They would catch runaway slaves and hand them back to the owners. It's disgusting that this system that they say is supposed to protect and serve us is historically based on systemic racism and squashing down movements. And to have the audacity to say that these are the people that protect you, when that's not what they're doing. It 2 years ago, I think, I'm pretty sure it was 2018, it might have been 2017, the NYPD went on strike to say, oh, well, look at how much worse things will get without us. And during that time, crime rates went down. So that really gives a full picture of the oppressive system that they uphold, and just how disgusting and historically wrong they are, how it's just rooted in oppression. And just seeing my queer brothers and sisters not recognize how important this rallying is, this call for attention, and the need to demonstrate like this, because people will just never take us seriously. Like when Colin Kaepernick protested at the NFL, he was delegitimized by all of the watchers. People walked out of the stadium saying, oh, well, it's un-American to kneel during the national anthem. Why can't they just protest peacefully? That is a peaceful protest. This basis of what's legitimate and what isn't what's peaceful and what should be listened to. They're not listening to our peaceful protests. And that's why people are mad. They don't want to listen to people of color who are talking about these systemic issues. It's just terrible that they don't want to listen to the people who are facing this every day. Like yesterday, so at the protest, there were people with megaphones talking about their issues, talking about the systemic inequalities that they've faced. And one white woman went up to the mic. And of course, she meant to talk in solidarity. But it was clear when she spoke how blind she was to her privilege, because she said things like, oh, I understand. I feel your pain. But what white people have to realize is, no, we don't feel their pain. This isn't something that we've had to face. This is an issue that's systemically affecting minorities. We can't possibly put ourselves in their shoes when this is a lifetime of indoctrination to violence. Like, my friends, my Black friends told me that when they were 13, they had to be sat down by their mother and told, oh, don't wear a sweatshirt out. Don't do this. Don't do that. If a cop comes, show your hands. Make sure that they know that you're not violent, even though it's clear that you aren't. That you might be killed just because of the color of your skin, just because you're going out. And I have never once had to be told that. And that's just, it's so heartbreaking to me to know that if I ever decide to have kids one day, there are going to be people who have to sit their children down and talk about their lack of privilege. And I'm going to have to tell them that their privilege is nothing that they've earned themselves, but it's something that they were granted by birth that puts them leagues ahead of everyone else. And so this woman said, I understand your pain. I understand where you're coming from. And it struck me as a white person when the other people said, no, you have no idea where we're coming from. You don't know what it's like. And she had the audacity to say, I work in the urban community. And everyone said, oh, it's okay. She has Black friends. Oh, hey, Frankie.
Hi.
Hi, this is Frankie. He is my journalist friend from school. I was just talking about yesterday in Newark, how this white woman said, oh, I feel your pain. I understand where you're coming from. And when she was called out on it, she said, I work in the urban community, so I understand their pain. And everyone was just like, oh, it's okay. She has Black friends. Yeah.
Understanding is not the same as knowing what it feels like.
Yeah. And so I was just telling what you told me about when you were 13, the conversation you had with your mom, if you want to talk about that.
I was gonna say, usually as a person of color, as a Black person in America, usually when you get to a certain age, you have this conversation with your parents that I don't think most white Americans have with their parents, which is how to handle an interaction with the police at that age. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
It's full of nervousness and kind of fear for the people that are, technically employed by the people to serve the people. And it's crazy because, when I was 13, my mom pretty much told me, hey, when you approach a police officer, remember, keep your hands where they can see him. Respectful, talk to them respectfully. Yes, sir. No, sir. Don't get too rowdy. Don't ask any questions. Just stay there and listen to what they say. Like, that is what we're taught all the time when it comes to police.
Yeah. This indoctrination of how to handle violence that systemically affects you. Like, you have to be polite about it.
Exactly.
which is just the most fucked up thing. And
it's always about, well, if you just comply, nothing happens. But I mean, even if we do comply, something might happen. And it's not just about the fact that lives are tragically lost and the fact that, people are being discriminated against. It's the fact that once these things happen, these guys aren't facing consequences.
mm-hmm.
There never is a system of accountability. How is a cop how is a cop that killed George Floyd still on the streets patrolling? He had 18 complaints before that. 18.
Yeah,
People get written
18.
people get written up more than 3 times at their job and they get fired. Like, you go up to a judge with an offense after 3 times, you're going to jail for a while. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand how that's not in place. Like, 18 and he's still out there talking to people. That doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and the failure um to utilize and like implicate these civilian review boards, because they don't want the people to have power. If these review boards didn't actually do anything, they'd have no problem with it. But as soon as people actually start having power and questioning cops and saying, hey, we're going to check you, that's something that they block. Like in Newark, they were talking about it yesterday, how they tried to implement it and it was blocked by the police fraternity, or
The union, probably the union.
it was like the fraternity of police, something like that. How they spent thousands and thousands of dollars in order to block this coalition from forming, so that this way they could be unchecked to continue to exploit their power.
Exactly. And I also want to go ahead to say to anybody who's watching this, if if you have anybody who lives with you who is in law enforcement, or anybody who you know that is in law enforcement, this isn't about an individual police issue. And I hope that you know that. I hope that you know that this whole not all cops are bad cops thing is not, it doesn't solve the problem. It doesn't solve the problem if there's a cop that isn't bad or isn't racist. If he doesn't speak up, and if he doesn't actually try to change the department from within, his silence doesn't do anything for me. It doesn't. It
Yeah,
still continues the same path. Like, they have pretty much, if you don't know this, cops have like a blood oath when they go in the force. It's like a blue code where they don't tell on each other. They don't snitch on each other. They don't hold each
mm-hmm.
other accountable themselves. So, how can we hold them accountable if they can't even hold themselves accountable? How do you want change when you say that you're a good cop, but you're not doing anything to change that? You're not going to your union reps and telling and negotiating things to have independent review boards, independent investigation, things like that. If a cop shoots somebody, how come they could get administrative paid leave? Like, no, that doesn't. Keeping police conduct records confidential. That is public. That should be public record. You're a
It
public.
really should.
Everything should be public record. I don't understand how hard it is for people to understand that, yo, this isn't just a few bad apples. This is a system. And even if it is a few bad apples, I'd ask you this. If I were to give you 100 apples and told you that 10 of them were poison, and that's only 10%, would you still take those chances? Probably not. And
Yeah,
that's the thing. It's not about just being, there shouldn't be. That shouldn't be the case. That shouldn't be the case. Lack of training, it's lack of tactfulness by the police, and it's just, again, these police unions that are strong arming local governments to just give them whatever it is that they want, and nobody's doing a thing about it.
yeah,
Again, for all the good cops, for example, in a place like NYC, how about all you good cops go out there and protest things like stop and frisk, something that is shown that statistically, it's shown that it disproportionately affects Black and brown communities all over the city. But nobody's speaking up about that. So again, when you say you're a good cop, how much of a good cop are you if not only are you not willing to uphold the right laws, but you also are willing to uphold bad laws? And
yeah.
that is the problem.
Because when people say, like, oh, not all cops. So say that you have 10 bad cops who have historically abused their power, and you have 1,000 cops that haven't come forward to report these, then you just have 1,010 bad cops.
Exactly.
Because
Exactly.
if you're not, like, if you're going to take an oath to protect and serve, and you're going to allow this injustice to occur, because I know no snitching, but you know, when it's this murderous injustice that will just undoubtedly affect Black and brown communities, this willful ignorance of, oh, well, I'm not a bad cop. Yes,
And,
you are.
I would also like to say to anybody who might watch it, this isn't just a Black person issue. Like, white people get abused by the cops actually more than the Black people. So this doesn't just affect us. This affects everybody. This is a problem with a militarized police force. Basically, they're goons. They're goons coming at you, and that needs to change, because again, it's not just a colored people issue or a black and white. It's an everybody issue. Everybody needs to be aware of this, because again, it's just that the police have way too much power and way too little accountability. They are not responsible with that power, and therefore we need to be able to assure that they are held in check, because we cannot have the people who are supposed to protect and serve us, not only us be afraid of them, but them be afraid of us. Police are taught in this country that they have to be afraid of the people that they serve in every community, not just, especially in Black and brown communities. They are taught to fear those people. Bro, there is
Yeah.
no reason why a officer should pull you over, and the moment that he approaches the car, he should have his hand on his gun. No reason whatsoever. For a routine traffic stop, no way in hell. But that's not what it is. They are taught to, instead of react, to just act. Not react to the situation happening, just to act as if the situation is going to get completely worse. Again, it breaks my heart, because when you look at a lot of these things, for example, Philando Castile also died in Minnesota. The man did everything that he had to do. Everything that he had to do. Maybe if the guy holding the gun would have been a little more calm, that whole situation would have not happened. That's the problem. The problem is these people are scared. You cannot have people who are scared holding guns. That doesn't make sense. They're going to hurt people. They're
And
going
yeah. And how are you going to expect these people who are being approached by police to stay calm when the cops can't even stay calm, when they're the instigators? How are you going to expect someone who's literally at their job to panic and shoot someone because, oh, I'm scared, when these people have their hands up and they're on their knees? How are you going to be afraid of them when they're complying with every order that you request? And it's just ludicrous to me to see cops all over the country in paramilitary gear, dressed like RoboCop, while first responders, like the healthcare workers, are wearing trash bags because they don't have enough funding to get the proper personal protective equipment. And you have these guys outfitted to the nines with assault rifles, riot shields, batons, like everything, with fucking gas masks. And they use tear gas liberally and pepper spray liberally to break up crowds in the middle of a pandemic that's brought on by a respiratory disease. Tell me how that's not abuse of power. Tell me how that's just, especially when COVID is like predominantly affecting marginalized communities where their infrastructure shows the failures of government, of this redlining of districts. It's disgusting.
Exactly, man. People who are going out there and protesting, they're fed up. And again, the thing is, look, if you do really want to keep it peaceful, if you're an officer, How about instead of meeting the protesters with kind of an antagonistic point of view, how about like it happened in Camden? You march with them, you see what they're fighting for, and you take that first step to understanding what the problem is. And not only that, if you're within the crowd, you know who's doing the wrong shit and you know who's not doing it. So you could probably stop it before it gets out of hand. If you're
Yeah.
with the people who are peacefully protesting, you could,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? Like, if you march with them and if you are truly there to, if your goal is instead of to stop the protest, to make sure that you protect the protest and you ensure that the protests are peaceful, because they're not making sure that the protests are peaceful. They're looking to break them up. They're looking to end the protest. If you really cared about the protest being peaceful, you would go out there and protect the peaceful protesters against the people who are looting, rioting, and doing whatever it is that they're doing. That's what you would do. You wouldn't just, again, shoot rubber bullets into a crowd where there's people who are just standing there. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah. I saw a picture from Seattle yesterday. There was a 12-year-old that got maced in the eyes, and the cop that did it had his badge number covered up with black tape, so that this way it was harder for him to be tracked down for his illegal actions. And in Brooklyn, plainclothes cops are in the protest. They use these color bands on their arms to identify themselves to each other. And they're the ones going in there and instigating. My best friend was at the protest in Brooklyn, and everything was entirely peaceful. They said that nobody was instigating anything, but they took the excuse of someone throwing a half-empty bottle of water to start pepper spraying people in the face, in the eyes, and then look at how bad it's gotten now that the NYPD are literally running over civilians who are protesting behind the barricades. They weren't crossing the lines, and they ran them over. Two of them, two cop cars, just mowed into them. And it's just where people always say that the justice system is so broken, but it's not, because it's functioning how it was designed. It was designed to hurt these people.
Yep.
And it just makes me so livid. Like yesterday in Newark, they were doing the Cupid Shuffle. That's not on the news. Where is that on the news of that peaceful protest? No, they just want to show people throwing Molotov cocktails who are undercover cops who are instigating. Like I saw footage of Columbus, Ohio, where cops were literally breaking down like a theater. They were breaking the glass, just trying to start a riot. And people want to talk about violence and how violence isn't the answer. But when you're part of a group of people that have been historically oppressed by violence for 400 years, like, where the fuck do you think they learned it from?
I would tell anybody who has the mindset of violence only begets violence, it's really easy for people to say that, but the truth is, how long can a community, how long can a group of people, and I'm talking, and like I said, this isn't even just about the Black community, this is literally just every citizen in the United States, because this should be worrying everybody. How as a community are we going to always be told that we have to turn the other cheek, but when we turn and give them the other cheek, it gets slapped all the same? It's again, people, there is a breaking point for a lot of people. There is a limit of how much people can take. And I'm very happy that everybody's going out there and everybody's expressing their voices, whether it be peaceful or not. You have to be heard, and the establishment needs to understand that the power of the people is really, really, really it, and not just something that we tell ourselves. We need to be able to actually make change ourselves if nobody's going to do it for us now.
Yeah. And I want to say one thing, like, as a white person in this circumstance, is to use your privilege and like check that, because it's not just checking it. You actually have to use it to make a difference. Like yesterday at the protest, I used my white body to form a barrier between the cops and the people of color, just in case shit went down, just because I know that I would be hurt less. You have to use what you're given in order to help this. And for the people saying like, oh yeah, I definitely care about it, and posting Black Lives Matter chains on their Instagram story, just let me know, what is that doing? How does that actually help? Like, sure, yeah, you're saying that Black Lives Matter, but what else are you doing? Because that just seems really performative to me as a white person, to just be like, oh yeah, Black Lives Matter, and then forget about it and tweet whatever nonsense you want or post your selfies. Like, now isn't the time. And it's I don't want this to just be another hashtag. This is time for actual change. I don't want people to forget about this in a week. That's not how it should happen. And to like white allies who are saying like, I care, do something. In the comments of this live stream, I'll drop a thread of petitions that you can sign, and I'll send US postal codes with it in case they need a US postal code and you don't know one. So that this way the people watching can actually do something instead of just saying that they care. Because I know that you care. You're donating, and thank you. We really appreciate it here in America, where the riots are just going on, but just it just can't be performative. And that's just what I want to say to the other white people here. Just don't let it be performative. Don't let it just be a hashtag. Like, look at people in the face and show them that you're doing something. Yesterday, I couldn't just sit home. I had to go to the protest because I couldn't. If I ever have kids one day, I can't look at pictures of this and say, oh yeah, I wasn't there. That's just shameful to me. And so I really want to thank everyone so much for listening, because it's a really important thing to listen to.
I also want to thank everybody for taking the time out of the day to listen to what I have to say. These are experiences that really affect me each and every single day here in America. Every single time that I'm out and I encounter, depending on what environment I'm in and environment I encounter, I am wrought with nervousness and fear no matter what. And it's not because of anything I've done. It is just because the color of my skin gives me the presumption of guilt instead of the presumption of innocence that we're afforded to by the Constitution of the United States. But it doesn't seem that way.
Yeah, like a few weeks ago when you came over to my neighborhood, you told me that you were nervous the whole time because it's a majority white neighborhood. Sure, I have Black neighbors, but like the majority of the neighborhood is white, and that's a scary circumstance to walk into, where you could just be presumed guilty, that people could think that you're suspicious because you're a Black man walking with me, your white female friend, and thinking that you're inherently doing something wrong by hanging out with your friend.
Yep, exactly. And that's the life that we live in every day. And it's okay if you think that way and you're doing it behind closed doors, but when it seeps into the system that is supposed to give everybody protection, it's a problem. Because if, for example, the lady that threatened the man at Central Park with calling the police, there was an incident not that long ago in a very famous park in the city of New York. And in that park, the rules are you must keep your dog on a leash at all times. And this African-American man was bird watching, and he noticed that a white lady had her dog off a leash, and he politely asked her if you could please put the dog on a leash. Those are park rules. She got upset and called the police. And before she called the police, she made sure she let him know that she was going to tell the police that he was Black.
Mm-hmm.
Problem. The fact that she thought that telling the police, especially the NYPD, whose number one investigative tactic is racial profiling, telling the police that he is Black would have an impact on how he is policed and how he would be approached by police. The fact that she felt comfortable enough with saying something like that tells you the fact that there is an actual problem and that everybody just likes to ignore it.
She was willing to commit murder by cop, essentially. She knew what she was doing. And just, I think the final thing that I personally want to say, like, if you have anything else to say, please do. But is if people don't want to actually listen to Black people and Black voices, maybe I can put it in the words of a 1700s white slave owner for them.
What white explain it for them? White explain it for them, please.
Yeah. If you don't want to listen to Black voices, let me quote a slave owner from the 1700s, one of the founding fathers, Thomas Jefferson, who said, "The tree of liberty must be refreshed from time to time with the blood of patriots and tyrants." If those aren't words for the situation, I don't know what else are.
And I just want to, the last thing I want to say is that as much as I would like to be idealistic and as much as I would like to live in a world where things are not the way that they are, I would like to let everybody know that the reality is your skin color has a lot to do with how you're perceived in America, and not just in America, all over the world. And if you want to truly help, it's about having the uncomfortable conversation that comes from looking at yourself in the mirror and maybe realizing that, hey, I'm not a racist person, but I have prejudices and biases that I sometimes, express publicly, and sometimes that I believe, which you shouldn't. And again, it's all about having these uncomfortable conversations so that these things are out in the air and that everybody knows that they are not true. And speak to somebody who is Black and speak to them about what their experiences are, because if you don't know, you think that everything is okay because it doesn't affect you. And that's the problem. You got to understand that if something is affecting somebody who is less privileged than you, it is your responsibility to use that privilege to help others at all times. And we can't do it alone, man. The people who are in power in this country don't look like me. The people who own most of the money don't really look like me, or don't look like a lot of us here. And those are the people, that we have to hold accountable as well. And we have to push them. But we cannot do that without the help of everybody else, because as sad as it is to say, everybody will gladly listen to white America before they listen to us. So if you are a white American or part of white America, you have to say something. And I would like
just
to thank
if you're white in general, you have
Exactly.
to say something. No matter where you are, you have to use your privilege, because as a white person, it's not enough to be not racist. You have to be actively anti-racist, because the seeds of racism are sown early on in your life. You get accustomed to the privilege that you have. So you have to actively dismantle that system as a white person to other white people. Use your privilege in order to make a difference. Don't just say, "Oh, that's a shame. I would never do that." You have to actually stand up for the people who are victims of this.
Also, if you feel like you want to make a financial contribution to any organization, make sure that if you live in America, if you don't, make sure to check out the NAACP. If you live in America, check out where your local NCP offices are. Make a donation to them. Make a donation to Black Lives Matter, the Minnesota Freedom Fund, and you could also make a donation at there's a GoFundMe for George Floyd's I believe are funeral expenses. So if you want, please try to donate to those things. It helps a lot because it gets people, it helps organize a movement, and it helps kind of push forward a better agenda for everybody.
Mm-hmm. Also, just as a note, if you're white, Venmo your Black friends a few dollars for a coffee, because it's exhausting to be Black.
I'm gonna go ahead and leave. My phone is almost dying, but thank you everybody for listening to me.
Yeah. thank you, everyone. I really appreciate that you gave us the chance to speak on this because it's really important.
All right. Goodbye.
Bye.